I am. I will add to my bio and say I do have a bit of travel experience from the marketing standpoint. I ran global digital for the Orlando CVB for 4 long years of my life. And I also had the wonderful opportunity to work on Qatar Airways. So I do have a bit of luxury and travel experience as well as being an advocate for the wine industry. Advocate by a drinker. That's really what that means. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to create more inclusive and diverse social media, how to create partnerships that diversify your marketing efforts, because we all know that budgets are tight because of this wonderful year. 2020 has thrown us lots of loops, and what paid and earned opportunities there are for diverse marketing. So, what are you going to start with? Let's start with a social media audit. Well, what does that mean? Let's ask ourselves real questions, real questions, and get down to brass tacks about what your social media looks like when it comes to revamping your social media. Let's get real about what it looks like now. How do you rate the current state of your social media's diversity? Because people are going to look when they're making buying decisions, they're going to look at what you have. Do you have any diversity? Do you know what diversity is? If you don't, come on, we've talked about it for 2 weeks already. But diversity comes in lots of ways. So are you showing lots of different people on your social media? What's your brand's tone of voice? Now, is it as some of the brands, which I took, I did my own audits of a lot of the brands in Yountville, and some of them are very luxury and very professional in tone, but others are a little more laid back. Do we get a sense of your brand and what our experience will be like through the tone of voice in your social media? Meaning when you read it, what's the voice sound like? Does it sound like someone who's happy? Does it sound like someone who's quite stuffy? Does it sound like a place where you'll have a good time? Does your brand, what do you communicate via social media? Are you letting people know what you have going on? Are you communicating great recipes that have great pairings? Are you simply letting them know what menu changes are or what new things you have on shelf? Kind of think through what it is that you want your social media to actually communicate. And then who does your social media speak to? Who are the people that social media is hitting versus who your customers are, like who you're seeing coming through the door versus who your social media is speaking to. And then think through whether your social media is talking to people that are kind of like in the aspirational part of planning or in the actual part of planning. And then be cognizant of how that tone speaks to that. So get real just for a moment. Okay, so here's the thing about diversity and understanding sort of what your speak is going to be is, what's your social media's role? I mean, what's your brand or organization's role, even thinking above that? Do you have a voice that's been outspoken in social and cultural issues, or have you been mostly quiet? Now, does it make sense for your brand to weigh in? Are you even an expert at these things? Do you have gaps in your knowledge, or shocking, do you have past transgressions you might want to have to deal with? There's lots of insights that an organization can offer to your community, but are you a real voice for your community in that? So be cognizant of that. This is where we've had a lot of questions about authenticity and whether it makes sense. And whether it's authentic for your company to get involved. Be true to really what you see for your brand. If your brand has internally no diversity, maybe you're not the right people to construct a message about diversity and inclusion. Maybe what your messaging should be is, we have work to do and we want to hear your voices. And that's a very valid way to respond. That's a very authentic way to respond. But if you are a particularly diverse brand and you want to tell people about how you're being diverse, or if you just want to say, this is something we haven't worked on in the past and now we're working on it, maybe that's how you're going to move forward. Decide what that role is and whether you're going to be explicit about it or whether it's going to be unsaid, because it may be that your choice is to diversify your imagery and be more inclusive in that way, and you're not necessarily going to talk about it. One authentic way to be involved is to simply do that, diversify it, and then not sort of make a trophy out of it, because you don't want to be performative. You don't want to say, oh, look, we finally found a picture of a couple that hits both LGBTQIA and they're two different races, and they have a child that is differently abled, and we found our token. Good Lord, please don't do that, and don't tell anybody I said for you to do that. Don't do that, and you don't have to speak about it. You could simply just post, as you're posting, other couples that are different than the old school nuclear family that we think of, and then let that be, because it is what it is. So think about those things, think about the role of your social media, but understand that this diversity is something we want to work on, and there's lots of different ways you can approach it. Write down those questions. I'm sure somebody has a question on that one. I could feel it through the Zoom. So, your social media interactions. Who is it that you're following? What other brands are you following? What other influencers are you following? What hashtags do you follow? Are you following groups that have been to your business or to Yountville? Have you been, are you interacting with them? Are you interacting with people who post beautiful pictures? I'm pretty sure I saw over 1 million posts with the hashtag Yountville. Follow it. When you see a beautiful couple who got married in the area, congratulate them. They may not have visited your business, but a congratulations is a wonderful way to interact with them and also their followers, and to start to understand who's coming and to be able to extend your outreach to people who are diverse, because there are lots of beautiful pictures if you check out that hashtag. Are you thanking people that tag you in posts or that hashtag you in their posts? Interact with them, comment, follow. That's the thing about social media, is that it's definitely a two-way street, but everybody who follows them is going to pay attention to you if you're congratulating them, thanking them for a comment. And that's an easy way, that's a 2 to 10 second way to extend the reach of what it is that you're doing and to gain more followers, which is ultimately sort of the goal of social media. But it's also authentic, and it's a great way to keep in touch with people who have interacted with you. And then really understand whether the interactions you're having can support diversity and equity goals. So that is, if you have a goal to be more diverse, we all know that there's not a ton of money to spend. I keep going back to this through this talk today, but there's not a ton of money to spend. So how can you support those goals through the things that you're already doing and the ways that you're already expending energy? So not even necessarily with your dollar spend, but with the energy that you're spending through your business. So keep that as a goal top of mind. So this is a good one. This is your social media post and comment checklist. These are the things I want you to think about when you're posting. This is sort of like an equity sequence. So does this post support your brand standards? Does it fit your brand? Does it further your brand goals internally and externally? Does it speak to your primary and secondary targets? Last week, I talked a little bit about those primary targets being people who are planning travel right now. That secondary target might be someone who's in that aspirational group, that person that's going to get to Yountville within the next 2 years. It's their goal, they're saving for it. That person's just as important, though they might not be making a buying decision right now, and therefore we might not be spending as much of our budget toward them, but we still want to speak to them. So let's make sure what we're posting speaks to those primary and secondary. Also, that goes back to active planners and aspirational travelers. And then 4, does this support diversity goals? Not every one of your posts is going to be a perfectly diverse group of people when you pull images, but if this one doesn't, did the last post do that, or did the one before that? And just being conscious of whether that is a part of your mix will get you leaps and bounds, steps and running forward when it comes to having diversity goals. And then, are we amplifying and supporting voices of the brand or brand advocates and diverse groups? Are we supporting our equity goals? So if you're not posting, are you commenting? Are you involved in those conversations? And are you giving a voice to those things? So I'm sure there might be some questions about sort of the difference between what you're posting and where. Maybe it's that you are furthering conversations maybe within LinkedIn that are different than conversations that you might be furthering within your Pinterest or within your Instagram or Facebook. So you can look at different conversations within different places, and they may be very different conversations, but they also might really help your different goals in different places. I hope that is helpful. So if you've got money to spend in one place and not necessarily in another place, think about the partnerships you have and how those can be used to increase your diversity. So with what's happening in your community, I know we've talked about in other weeks that your community simply isn't as diverse and that you have to really pull people and candidates for hiring from outside communities. And honestly, right now during a pandemic, hiring diverse candidates may be really difficult right now. So if that is true, how can we be conscious of creating partnerships that increase diverse voices within your business? So there's the consumer facing or customer facing partnerships. That's what retail partnerships can you create. If you have retail partners, can you diversify the backgrounds of those? How much of your shelf space includes diverse ownerships? So that's not just ownerships of African-American background, but think of your owners who are Latinx, who are LGBTQIA, who are female owned. I can tell you that female owned businesses receive so much less startup funds than male owned businesses. So be cognizant of just the gender discrepancy of the businesses and partnerships that you work with. How many of your purveyors are of diverse backgrounds, and what interesting promotions can you create with your partners to increase your mutual customer bases? So if, I'll tell you, for instance, I worked on a partnership that was very interesting to me. It was a beauty company that worked with a diet company and a meal planning company. I wouldn't have put those two together as a natural organic extension, but they had similar customer bases. And what they did is they worked together to do partnerships of sampling programs. I never on any day, even with my particularly creative background and creative mind, would have put those two together, but it worked beautifully. And both of them were able to almost double their email lists and really did a great job for both customer bases. And they extended their reach quite significantly, simply with reaching outside of the box and reaching to partnerships that were particularly diverse for them both. So how can you highlight diversity on shelf or through your social media? Again, in an authentic way, simply posting pictures and being excited about your partnerships can go quite a long way, extending that through your social media, through your email blast, those sorts of things. And then what organizational partnerships can you create to improve diversity? We talked about this a little bit, but There is an organization for just about every career you can think of. And typically those organizations are also broken down into gender and racial disparities groups, as well as LGBTQIA groups. So there is, I think I've used this example, there is a Latinx accounting group, there is a Black Accountants of America, there's a Female Accountants of America, there's an accounting group for everybody. All of those people, we know that they're going to share a high household income. We know that those people are going to be busy in April. We know that those people are probably taking a vacation in May. So those are great groups to reach out to. Those are great partnerships to create. And oftentimes it's as simple as reaching out and saying, hey, we'd love to offer samples or coupons or whatever that is, or a promotion through your group. Can we sponsor your next email blast, whatever that is. So be creative, think out of the box. So then there's also the corporate facing partnerships. This is what business services can you create or do you need? And then setting, when you're getting quotes, setting goals about being intentional about being inclusive. So that is going to, if you are looking, anything that you're looking for, being ensuring and being intentional about whoever's working on that, letting them know that you want, if you're getting 3 quotes, make sure that one of them is from a group that is inclusive, or 2 of them, or gosh darn it, all 3 of them. But go ahead and looking for extending beyond the normal groups that you are using, and looking for groups that are inclusive. And then, are there opportunities to strengthen your existing partnerships? If you are creating an internal task force that is about diversity, do you have a partnership that you currently have that is owned by someone in another group or diverse group, asking them if they'd be willing to sit on the board of that task force, or asking them what they're doing, and looking for ways to strengthen those existing partnerships to deepen them. And then of course, also looking for ways to make them more profitable. So here's some great partnerships examples that I found that are very recent. And I looked for some that are big and then also some that are smaller companies, so that we can recognize that this happens on large levels, but it also happens at the startup level. It also happens at not the huge, $100 billion brand sort of levels. So Beyond Meat partnered with the Black Basketball Stars Social Change Fund. So they partnered with a fund that already existed to help extend what they were already looking to do. CBS, okay, that one has big budgets, but they've allocated 25% of their script budgets to projects from people of color. Pernod Richard, I hope I said that right. I know all of you know how to say it. Nope, Elizabeth's face tells me I didn't. I tried. I digress. They planned an app that identifies social media hate speech. Wow, they're spending their money on something that could help lots of other companies. Kristen S. is a small hair care company that is making an undisclosed donation to Black Girls Code, the Innocence Project, and Spelman College. So they're reaching out in very special ways. And also undisclosed donations could be huge or could be particularly small. We don't know, but we can definitely appreciate it. And Siete Foods pledged to donate $200,000 to organizations to end the fight of racism. I'm sorry, organizations that fight to end racism, not to end the fight. You know what I mean. So there's lots of different ways that you can partner, and you can partner with existing organizations. You don't have to do all the work yourself, and the work could be about work and not necessarily about dollars at all. So then we get to move on to inclusive media opportunities. And I want to give you just a quick overview of the 3 different types of media. You have paid media, which is all the ways that you spend money. That's your advertising, your magazines, digital ads, sponsorships, and commercials. your owned media, which is everything that you own. That's your company blog, your created content that would live within your site, and then your brand's social media outlets. Your earned media is going to be PR mentions, editorial, all of those opportunities, social media and social media mentions specifically. So the social media that is picked up by other people and that mentions you. In theory, yes, I'm sure someone's thinking, yeah, but I have to pay my PR company. Yes, but they have to beg everybody else to give you those mentions. Oh, there we go. I don't even know how that one happened. Okay, so those are the different types of media. Oh, nope. There we go. So then we go back to the word audit. I know it's a dirty, terrible word, but I used it twice. You'll forgive me, won't you? First, think about what your budget spends realistically look like. Now, I will tell you, I will tell you that I used to run a media team at an advertising agency, so I know that budget spends are a place that is rigid. That is not a place where you have tons of extra money to dump in. So when you're looking to be inclusive, it's really about how can we use that money more smartly, understanding what the goals are. I am not going to tell you to go divert all of your money to inclusive outlets and hope that it works for you. We have to still be smart, and we still have to really be cognizant of what our business goals are, and ultimately that is to increase sales. So be specific and thoughtful of that as you're looking at your media audit. Can you afford to divert spend to more inclusive outlets? So that is, can we include some of those more inclusive outlets, and how much can we afford to do? Can we create alternative ads that are more inclusive? So that is, instead of diverting funds, but could you simply have a second ad that takes the same amount of, if you're looking at digital, you're still going to get the same number of views, but maybe you have a second ad that has imagery that is more inclusive. And so that's a great way to do that. And you're not spending any different amount of money. We're simply giving yourself alternative ads that are more inclusive. Can you include inclusive outlets in your earned media outreach? That's all. When we're reaching out, if you have a PR firm that you're working with, it's simply telling them we want to be very specific about including outlets that have a focus that are more inclusive. So are we including outlets that are LGBTQIA or Latinx or African American or Asian American or older or younger, and all of the other great ways that we include diversity? What programs have you done that have been super successful? What's the best thing that you've done in the last couple of years? Can we improve on that in any way? And can we duplicate those programs with inclusive groups? So if you had a partnership last year that worked beautifully and wonderfully and worked so well for you, what are like audiences that are inclusive groups? So if you had a program that, for instance, worked really well with mommy bloggers, great. How can we do something with mommy bloggers that are a more inclusive group of mommy bloggers? So how can we replicate that? Because we know that moms like wine. So how can we reach out to groups that are more inclusive? And absolutely duplicate that with more inclusive groups. Step 2, my favorite one, the imagery. How can we simply diversify your imagery and still meet your brand standards? When you're shooting imagery, include diverse models and sets that represent inclusive standards. And then when you're pulling stock photography, use stock photography outlets that have diverse imagery. 2 of the ones I pulled for you are Color Stock and Tonal, both beautiful, great, high quality photography that give you lots of different choices. And then be specific with your agencies about providing diverse options for ads and imagery. Sometimes it's simply that, and again, as someone who has worked on the creative side and on the ad agency side, we're simply trying to read your mind and if we're not sure what you want, we're probably going to go for the easiest in the middle and let them know, hey, we'd love to see some options with diverse imagery. I'd love to see someone who is differently abled in one of our ads. I'm sure anyone that's aware of the Gap and Old Navy and even Target all are going outside of the norms and pulling imagery for differently abled models. And it's really beautiful and it's wonderful to see in store and online and throughout their imagery. So your content creators, this is step 3. So when you get to the idea of who's going to create our content and who are we going to work with, this also might be influencers, my favorite dirty word. How can we be more inclusive about the content creators we are using? What steps can we take to extend the reach of our creators? And then how can we extend our PR pushes to be more inclusive? So are we adding extra content creators who are more diverse, or are we being specific about those PR initiatives to extend their content? So one thing I can tell you is that while I have worked for brands that are large, I didn't get to work on the largest brands. So while I've had great budgets, I've never had those crazy unlimited budgets where I could just be like, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars around the world. No. I've always had to be very scrappy with the spends that I've done for brands and with where we've spent money. So be very specific about anything you're creating, making sure that that content can live on in as many channels as possible and utilizing that to extend. Well, if you're working with content creators, ensuring that you are being specific about giving them their name through what you're doing so it helps them extend so that that relationship is more reciprocal. That's also a really kind way to take care of them through this because it is a very reciprocal relationship. Okay, so I wanted to give you a quick overview of some great content creators who are all within the travel and food space. The first one that you'll see, Justin Bloomgreen, is a gay travel blogger. We have Dining Travel. She is a beautiful South American, she's Boricua. Yeah, she's Latina. She's based in DC. Another great Latina travel blogger. We have a Black travel blogger who is Canadian and Jamaican, who is affiliated with the Travel Channel. All of these have great numbers and a great group. We also have an LA-based Asian travel blogger, and then, oh, I put Justin twice, forgive me. But lots of different choices here. There's a group for everybody. Everybody has representation, and there's somebody that can fit into what you're doing for within your budget that will extend your reach, but reach you into a new group of people that you may not have been looking for. I also wanted to give you a few resources. These are great places to start. So the first one is the National Association for Advertisers. They developed a list of diverse suppliers. Check it out. This is 100 different companies of diverse ownership that can help you with advertising needs. The Golden Gate Business Association and the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce has a list of certified LGBT-owned businesses. The Women's Business Enterprise Council, this is in the Pacific, so it's in your area, also has a great list for you. And then the National and Regional Minority Supplier Development Councils both have lists of companies that you can reach out to that will give you opportunities for sponsorship with diverse ownerships. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. It's time for my favorite part, the questions. Okay.
All right, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself or put it into the chat. I'll take a peek into the chat and see where we are. No questions yet, Tari. You were on fire today. You got it all. I'm sure there's questions. I mean, and you've got tons of great examples. I mean, I love the resources that you've given us as well. Oh, Stephanie is typing.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. She's been good about the questions in the last two as well.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I know, I was thinking, do I have any other questions? So I do have a question, and maybe this is just kind of a showing my age, but for the content creators, I mean, do you just go into like Instagram and type in, you know, what market specifically that you're trying to find these, you know, like
I go with hashtag travel blogger. You can simply Google Latinx travel blogger or Latinx food blogger. I will tell you, if you are being particularly scrappy with your budget, going for bloggers who love what it is that you have but aren't specific to that industry, they're usually cheaper. So if and I'm scrappy. If you are if you're food specific, guess what? Everybody loves food. If you could find mommy bloggers who have a great following, or travel bloggers, or people in the area, kind of using them as your secondary target, you'll probably spend less. Okay, Stephanie, is that helpful, Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you.
There's a list for everything, but you can also go with hashtags. Okay, Stephanie asks, for diverse content creators, are there any wine bloggers, wine industry professionals you know of who we could reach out to, and how do we ask them to post a piece without it being awkward? I think, yes, there are. Oh, I had her. I will find it, and I will post it while I'm talking. There are a number of them, and it's not so awkward. It literally is, and I've done this outreach a number of times. In fact, I'll tell you, I will literally read the last outreach that I got. I opened up my Instagram this morning and someone said, hi, my name is Troy. I work behind this account. I saw that you liked one of my pictures. How sweet of you. Looks like you run a couple of businesses. That's amazing. I'd love to get your opinion on what it is that we sell. Could I send you a sample, and would you be willing to post about it? That's all. And that's simply usually about what I write as well, because I've done a lot of this outreach, and it is, hey, you've got a really great Instagram. It looks like you go to a lot of wonderful places. We'd love to get your opinion on this. Could we send you this and get your opinion? Would you be willing to post on it? That's all. Sometimes they'll come back and ask for money, and then you negotiate to send them less. Or then it is, I usually try to negotiate something that is based on either giving them a spiff on how much business they can bring in. If people are asking for money outright, I kind of go, no way, but I'm always happy to negotiate working on some sort of program with their followers. Sorry, I see some other ones.
That's okay. Before you jump into that, I'm going to send a link in the chat, and this goes to our diversity, equity, and inclusion blog. And we have a list of 7 social media influencers that you could also go to jump on top of that. So a couple of suggestions there as well. All right, back to you, Tari.
There is one called the Black Wine Professionals group, and they are on Instagram. I will put it in here as well. Yes. I came across them when I was looking.
I have reached out to them as well, so we will be more involved with them. So cool.
Yeah. Okay. How do we? Okay. Thanks for the suggestion on diverse imagery. Struggling with using non-authentic images, and want to be true as we navigate improving diversity. If you do not have organic, oh, thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad that that's helpful. You know, that's one of those things that it's simply with stock photography, you can usually find an image with people of diverse backgrounds. And it's just simply seeking that imagery. And sometimes it's simply letting the groups and partners you have and you're working with know that you're interested in having those options. That's such a big part of it. Because honestly, the partners that you have, if it's not been explicitly stated, they may have a small mind of assumptions in what you are looking for. And until it's been explicitly stated, they're trying to work in the safest path, right? And I can tell you I've taught unconscious bias and diversity inclusion trainings with 11 PR and advertising agencies, and every single one of them has had personal stories of getting in trouble with clients for making assumptions. And so there's a fear level there that until they know that it's a goal for you, they're probably going to stick to what is most common, quote unquote, and most safe. So sometimes we have to be explicit about those sorts of goals. What else you got? I will also say there's a beautiful group of women smiling at me right now because I have the good view. And I'm not saying don't turn your cameras on, gentlemen, but it's nice to see all these ladies smile.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Stephanie. Stephanie is also a mom. Very good. Well, if there are no more questions.
Wonderful.
A mom who loves wine. Yes, thank you, Stephanie. On the board, we were on the board at the Napa Moms together for a moment. So
wonderful.
Anyway, so we do have a couple other things coming up for the chamber. We have one more diversity and inclusion webinar. Is that pulling up?
Yep.
Okay,
yes.
Great. It's not on my screen. So we have next week, diversity and inclusion in the wine industry, Thursday, August 13th at noon. Still register online, please, through the Yountville Chamber calendar. And then we have our next all-member virtual meeting on Wednesday, August 19th at 10 a.m. So those are coming up. Hope to see you there virtually. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Tari. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Take care.